Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Emily, and I'm the Marketing Director for Clinkscales Elder Law Practice. We are a firm with main offices in Hayes and Wichita, serving clients everywhere in between that really focuses on helping those clients answer questions and issues regarding aging, chronic illness, long-term disabilities, and more. So we're very excited to bring you this webinar today entitled How to Pay for Long-Term Care. Please feel free to send any questions that you may have to me in the chat box that's located at the bottom of your screen. And at the very end of this presentation, we will address any of those questions that you may have. Also, if you have any additional questions you'd like to discuss with Randy or a member of our staff, we'll open up our breakout rooms after the session. So what that means for you is that you will have a chance to speak privately with a member of our staff about your situation, or have us at Clinkscales address any burning questions that you may have. So without any further ado, I will go ahead and like to introduce you to Randy Clinkscales, and I'll hand it over to him now to get us started.
Hello, everyone. I'm Randy Clinkscales, and just want to check again with Emily. Emily, you can hear me okay?
Sound great.
Yeah. And then if you don't mind, everyone, if you would just, there's a chat box. If you'll just type, I want to know if you can see the slideshow okay. Just type Y for yes in that chat box, and that way we know that people are actually seeing the slideshow. And so I'll go ahead and get started, but Emily, you let me know if there's anyone that is having a problem. So let's talk, today we're going to talk about how to pay for long-term care without going broke. And the genesis of this program really started several years ago. I live in a rural area of the state in Hayes. We have a practice that covers most of the state, but as you can imagine, a lot of our families that we work with are farmers, and so a lot of times the how do we protect a farm? So, but we're going to talk about just how to protect your property, how to plan for long-term care. The other thing I want to mention, I use long-term care in a broader sense than maybe what you're used to. So really long-term care for me can be a nursing home, it could be assisted living, it can be someone living in independent living, it can be someone who's getting services in their home. But the key there is that they're getting some assistance, whether that's paid for by somebody else, a government program, or whatever it is. So what we're going to today, we're going to discover the ways to pay for care, how to protect your spouse, how to preserve and protect business and investments, and how to stay at home. And I've carved this talk down from an hour and a half to about 50 minutes. So I'm going to go pretty quickly, and I'm hitting some high points. But if you have questions, there's a chat box, and you can write your questions in that chat box. And at the end, if we have some time, I'll try to get those to those. And again, also, as Emily mentioned, you'll have the opportunity to go into one of our chat rooms. I'm not sure how that works. And then we can set up a time to talk in that chat room. So this is for you if you're concerned about losing everything, wondering how to pay for long-term care if it's necessary, wanting to be sure your spouse is protected, wanting to pass on a business or property to your family, or if you're wanting to stay at home and out of the nursing home. A lot of times I ask my clients if they could wave a magic wand, what would they like? Probably the thing that floats to the top is they'd like to stay at home as they age. They would like to be able to pay for care without losing everything, and frankly, not having to worry about that. Many married couples, their concern is protecting each other and also passing on property to their spouse, their children, and to others. I want to visit with you a little bit about this is a testimonial that one of our clients recently gave to us, and let me give you a little bit of background. Sherry came to us, actually Sherry and her husband came into our office. He had Parkinson's. He was pretty far along. We really wanted to try to help the family keep him at home as long as possible. And we did. We worked with them for several years and kept Sherry's husband at home. Eventually, the disease process increased. Even though we had people coming in the home, it became too much for even them to be able to handle. So we eventually moved him into a nursing home. And we continued to monitor how he was doing in that nursing home. So this is from Sherry, and let me just read to you what she said. My husband has Parkinson's. You helped me keep him at home as long as possible. You showed me how to become a better caregiver. I could not figure out how to pay for care with Medicare and Medicaid on my own, and I highly recommend Clinkscales Elder Law Practice. It was quite a journey with Sherry, and she did a great job, a devoted spouse through her husband's journey. So who the heck am I? I don't know why my staff decided to put a monkey there, or a gorilla maybe it is, chimpanzee maybe. But they did, and so I'll talk to them about that later. I'm an elder care attorney. I have offices in Hayes and Wichita, but have clients throughout the state. I focus on aging and chronic care issues, protection of assets from long-term care costs. I've been practicing for 40 plus years, but the last 16 have really been the best when I changed my focus. And I'll get to that in a moment about what caused that change in focus. This is my family. This is my three sons. My youngest son and his wife are on the bottom row, live in Wichita. Those are my two grandsons. They're pretty special to me. And that's my wife. We've been married 40 years. Why am I so passionate? So I practiced law for 30 or so years, 20 years, I guess, and had a grandmother, Thelma. This is my grandmother, Thelma Wafer. She lived in in Fort Worth. She had a heart attack right after Christmas of 2000. She had been widowed for several years, and my mother, Valet, had moved into the home with my grandmother, and they were kind of partners, but really my mom was there to take care of my grandmother. When my grandmother had her heart attack in 2000, she was given a diagnosis of 3 to 6 months to live. Then 2 months later, February 16th, my mom just didn't wake up one morning. And so all of a sudden I was a caregiver for my grandmother. And being an attorney, I thought I could navigate the system. What I soon became to understand, that even though I'd done a lot of estate planning, as well as some other work, I was not prepared for the variations and the requirements that it took to help somebody that was facing aging or chronic illness issues. So I began working with my grandmother, and in actuality, after about 4 years of working with my grandmother, now remember, she had 3 to 6 months to live. So I'm into year 4. I've really learned a lot already from her. And so we changed our focus in our office to help families like my grandmother. And really, it was based on the lessons that I learned from my grandmother. What was her big lesson? What was her big lesson to me? She wanted to stay independent. Secondly, she wanted to stay out of the nursing home. She wanted to protect her assets so she could maintain the lifestyle that she wanted. It had nothing to do with passing property on or doing anything. It's just so that she could have all the options that she wanted to take care of herself and be independent. And then the other lesson that I learned in working with my grandmother is how important caregiver assistance was. So I was the caregiver. And so I actually, when we were setting up our office to take care of my grandmother and people like her, we actually started bringing in professionals called care coordinators. And in my office, we have 3 of them. 2 are social workers and one's an RN. But they work with our families that have a chronic illness or are having aging issues. And really, my grandmother was suffering from aging issues. What I learned was that you need to have a plan. You need to be flexible about that plan, and you need to be guided through the plan. The journey can be ever changing. Again, my grandmother had 3 to 6 months to live. That journey actually went on for 10 years. And part of that journey was in Texas, part of that journey was in Kansas. But what I want to emphasize with you is that journey can be, and actually was, very wonderful with my grandmother. But again, it's because I had assistance from the care coordinator in my office and my other staff in helping my grandmother. And we'll get into specific to that later. So this is a family that we worked with early on. They came to us when the gentleman's wife got sick. He was elderly himself, and he and his son came in to see me. He had been told by the nursing home that he needed to sell everything, his home and his farm, and that he would need to spend it all on his wife's care. And he was heartsick because he was farming the ground, then his son was going to farm the ground. We were able, let me just read what he said. When my wife got sick and needed the nursing home, I was told I would have to sell my home and my farm. I thought I would go broke. Randy saved my farm for me and for my children. Just a great, just a heartwarming message that he sent to me. Long-term care, long-term chronic illness does not have to devastate your finances or your family. And I really want you to take that point from today's talk. It does not have to devastate your finances or your family. And we're going to explore about how to prevent that devastation. What you're going to discover today is how to plan for long-term care costs. Secondly, we're going to talk about how to pay for long-term care costs. And third, and perhaps most importantly to me, is how to stay at home. How to plan for long-term care costs. This is our first big point. Can't overemphasize that planning avoids crisis. Without planning, then we're going to go into a crisis and our options are going to be more limited. But by planning, it allows you to protect what is most important. Maybe it's a farm, maybe it's your home, maybe it's some investment that you have, but it allows you to decide what is most important, what is it that you want to protect, who you want to protect it for, and why do you want to protect it for that purpose or that individual. And then again, something that was very important to my grandmother is that you are in control. You get to make the decisions versus being put in a position where somebody else is making a decision for you, or circumstances are making a decision for you. So I want to give you a couple cases here. I've changed the names. Mr. and Mrs. Jones came to me, 65 and 62. Frankly, in my office, that's a pretty young couple. But their goal was to protect the farm. And so the background is they're still working, still farming. They own a home, 480 acres. They had some cash and retirement of about $300,000 and relatively healthy. But the farm had been in the family for several generations, and they wanted to pass it on to their children. That was really important to them. And they didn't want to give it to them because they still wanted to farm. They were surprised that long-term care costs were $7,000 to $10,000 a month. Frankly, we have some clients that are paying $12,000 a month, but around Hayes, it is around $7,000. I know our clients in Wichita, a lot of them are paying $8,000 or more a month. They knew that if they went into a nursing home, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson knew, they would end up using up all their cash, and they would have to start selling the farm off. Or if they went on Medicaid, that Medicaid would put a lien against all their property. So what we did is we sat down with them, found out what their goals are, and we designed a plan to protect the land from long-term care, as well as lawsuits and bankruptcies. Now, as a practical matter, they're still farming the ground. They still get all the income. They're making all the government program decisions, but it's protected. And if something were to happen, as long as they don't apply for Medicaid for 5 years, because we put it into a special type of trust that we've designed, a special irrevocable trust that protects it from Medicaid and lawsuits and bankruptcy. As long as they don't apply for Medicaid for 5 years, the property in that trust is going to be protected. Medicaid can't get a lien against it. They can't be forced to sell the property to pay for long-term care. But it was important to start the process now before there was a crisis. Because Mr. and Mrs. Jones were relatively healthy, because they had some cash reserves, then we could go ahead and start this process. As they stated to me afterwards, when they realized what long-term care costs were, and they realized what their investment in this planning was going to be, they stated that the investment was well worth protecting our assets from care cost of $7,000 a month. I want to give you another example, because this is an example with an older couple. So Mr. and Mrs. Schmidt are 72 and 70. They both had recently retired. Their assets included Mr. Schmidt's $350,000 in an IRA, and Mrs. Schmidt had $200,000 in an IRA. They had investments of $300,000. They had a home and 3 children and 5 very special grandchildren. They were concerned if one gets sick, one of them got sick, assets would be depleted and the spouse would be impoverished. They also worried that if they both got sick, everything would be eaten up. And they really wanted to leave money to their grandchildren. So even though they're 72 and 70, we showed them a tool, and I don't sell the tool, but I showed them the tool that we would use to help them achieve their goal, and that was to protect each other and leave money to their grandchildren. So we purchased with Mr. Schmidt's with $150,000. I think it's Mr. Schmidt's IRA, one of their IRAs. We used $150,000 and we bought a $250,000 life insurance policy with no annual premium. And it provided $7,000 a month of long-term care coverage for about 5 years. Now, why this was so attractive to them is that there was no more premiums, but more especially, if they never used it, then their family would get a life insurance policy of $250,000. And if they did use it for long-term care, let's assume they used $50,000 of the they had a claim for long-term care of $50,000. All that did is reduced the death benefit of the life insurance policy. So again, if they had a long-term care expense of $50,000, then when they died, that $50,000 would be deducted from $250,000, and their family would get $200,000. It was interesting because in this case, it was actually their children that brought the Schmidts in to see us. And so they initially had been reluctant to do any planning, but when we got the kids in the room, the kids really explored with them, really encouraged them to get some planning done. And they were really, really happy once they got it done and realized there was an easy solution. One thing I forgot to put on this slide, they actually had a long-term care policy that was costing them about $7,000 a year. It only provided about $3,500 of long-term care coverage. So this was a real win-win for these folks. So I've just given you a couple of alternatives about how you can pay for care, how you can plan for care. In one case by using an irrevocable trust, in another case by acquiring some long-term care insurance, but not the traditional long-term care insurance, using a hybrid life insurance policy. So what do you need to do if you're trying to plan for long-term care and preserve assets? What you would do is meet with our office for a strategy session, and we would explore what options are available to you, given your health, given your resources, given what your goals are. One of the things that is really important to me is to get essential documents in place. What do I mean by that? I would want you to get really strong powers of attorneys in place. There is a perception out there that all powers of attorneys are the same. That's not true. I'm looking at the corner of my desk. I'm looking at a power of attorney right now that is really very poor. It was drafted in 2010. And luckily, my client still has capacity. And so we can change that power of attorney. But with a poor power of attorney, if you lose capacity, your spouse could be greatly hamstringed, or your children could really be hamstringed if they're trying to get some planning done for you. So it's important to me that we get really strong powers of attorneys. One more example. If I give my son power of attorney and say, you have all the powers in the world, and sign it, under Kansas law, I've left out about 15 powers. They're not good powers or bad powers, they're just powers. And so for a lot of my older clients, we really want all 15 powers to be in there. So we like to discuss with our clients about those powers and how broad they should be. So then after our strategy session, we'll start implementing the strategy right away because we want to avoid any roadblock or changes in circumstances. So if the Schmidts came in to see me and were wanting to get this hybrid policy and one of them had been diagnosed with dementia, we probably couldn't have done that. And so it's important to try to get that done when the circumstances are correct, are perfect. Same with the family that we did the irrevocable trust for. If one of them was really, really sick and needing care really soon, the irrevocable trust may not have been a strategy that we could have used to help that family. So now let's talk about how to pay for long-term care. So what's the difference in what I just said? So now we know we're going to have long-term care. And so how are we going to pay for that? First, you need to make the decision of how to pay for care. What is the tool? What is the fund? What is it that you want to have in place? But you also need to understand that if we plan correctly, you don't have to go broke if you do need long-term care. And so as part of this, how to pay for care, we're going to talk a little bit about government benefits to pay for care, such as Medicare, VA, and Medicaid. So now I want to talk to you about using planned resources to pay for care. So in this case, and please understand, I've had to change the names because I want to protect my clients. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson are in their 70s. Mr. Johnson has a stroke and he's in the hospital and he needs to be discharged. So this is a fairly recent case, actually, but it's a case that gets repeated. The family came to see us right away. They have decent income. They have a home. They have investments in a business worth about $500,000. And they have long-term care insurance of $200 a day for 3 years. The concern that they have is before the stroke, Mr. Johnson had been really pretty healthy. And so the concern would be that he was going to live for a long time, but be in a nursing home. And they were concerned about how to pay for care and what happens after the long-term care policy was used up. They really wanted to preserve something for the spouse, for Mrs. Johnson, and potentially for the children. So what happened here is that Mr. Johnson was going to be discharged to a nursing home, but instead we directed the family to have him discharged to a skilled facility. Why? Because if he goes from the hospital to a skilled facility, Medicare will help pay for his care for a period of time. But more importantly, he will continue to get therapy, i.e. skilled care, during that stay, and he'll get better. And so by doing that, we were able to develop a plan for Mr. Johnson to come home. And we actually are able to tap into the long-term care policy to pay for home care and home improvements. In addition, some of his home care is going to be paid for by Medicare. By doing this, we actually stretch out the long-term care policy because we're not using $200 a day. We're using something less than that. So that actually lengthens the term of the long-term care policy. So the result was that Mr. Johnson got skilled care. So our early involvement did 4 things. He got the Medicare benefits extended. He got health improvement that he really needed. He was able to return home, and the long-term care policy was extended, therefore protecting assets. even further. But again, part of this is that the family came to us early enough. We had another case very similar to this where they came in to us too late. He had already been discharged from the hospital. He went into a nursing home that did not provide skilled care, and then it was too late to get him back on Medicare. So what happened is he ended up staying in nursing home for the rest of his life. So let's talk about crisis planning using Medicaid. So here's the crisis case. Mr. and Mrs. Reed came in, actually Mrs. Reed came in to see us. Mr. Reed has cancer. He has been discharged to a nursing home and he's paying $8,000 a month. The assets that they have include Mrs. Reed's $80,000 IRA. They have a home and they have a joint account of $60,000. They were told by the nursing home they would need to spend down all of their resources before Medicaid would help, and that Medicaid would end up putting a lien on their home. To compound it, Mrs. Reed was really focused on being sure that her husband would get good care. So she was worried that he would not get good care in the nursing home. So one of the things that we were able to show Mrs. Reed is that we could get Mr. Reed on Medicaid. We were able to set it up so that Mrs. Reed kept all of the assets, and in addition, no lien was placed on her home. I also want to let you know that if Mr. Reed was able to come home, because he was a wartime veteran, we would have been able to actually tap into VA benefits that would pay $2,200 a month to help pay for home care. So sometimes we can avoid Medicaid by using VA benefits. I will let you know, we probably have 70 or 80 families in our office that are currently getting VA pension benefits. And again, there's some requirements about that. It has to be a wartime veteran and so forth. Whole nother discussion. But again, the idea here is that we have the tools, we know what options are out there that can help a family like the Reeds or the Johnsons. So what do you need to do if you're dealing with a crisis, you're worried about how to pay for care? What we would like to do is meet with you for a strategy session as soon as possible. We want to explore all funding resources. If we can avoid Medicaid, we would like to do so. But we really need to get those strong powers of attorneys in place, just like we talked about earlier. And we also want to get the other estate planning documents going. Kind of our mantra is, our goal is to help you find, get, and pay for good care without going broke. And that's a really good summary about what we would do in one of these types of cases. This is a case, I want to give you some background here. Pat came in to see us and she was angry. Her husband was sick. She was angry that he was sick. She was angry at the twist of life. She was angry that she could not keep him at home. I think she was angry at him for being so sick. He was supposed to be the strong one. But, and I think she was angry that she was afraid she was going to run out of money. And she couldn't navigate the system. But we are able to help Pat and get her husband into the nursing home. We found a good nursing home for him. We were able to make sure he got good care. Um, if you get a chance to look at our website, actually Pat's testimony is on our website. But let me read to you kind of a summary of what she said. My husband needed nursing home care. You guided me through the process. Your care coordinators made sure my husband was getting good care. I highly recommend you because you are always there for your clients and will guide them through everything that goes on. Things we never expected to go through. And I think that's a real key. The long-term care maze is so complicated, and it was really overwhelming to Pat as it is to many people, and that we can guide families through that process. So now we're going to turn to one of my favorite topics, and it's how to stay at home. And really with our planning, that's kind of what we push to the top, is how can we stay home if we get sick, if we develop a chronic illness, if we develop Alzheimer's, and how can we care for our caregivers and protect our property. But again, let me go back. 3 points here under how to stay at home. It's the most important goal. Under number 2, it's not home versus nursing home. There's a lot of things in between, and a lot of our education process with our families is helping them understand that. Support for a caregiver is really key. Let me talk to you about these for just a moment. I had a family in, either yesterday or last week. I'm losing the exact time. But dad's sick, mom's at home, but mom needs some help. And they were about to move dad into a nursing home and mom into assisted living. And their belief was that in their small community, there was no help. And so her only option was to move into the assisted living or assisted living facility or even the nursing home. But we knew from our prior experiences, from our information, that there in fact was help available in that community. And so we were able to show that family that she could stay at home, but she would need some assistance, but we could help her access that assistance and show her how to pay for it. So, personal story, Thelma Wafer, this is my grandmother, 86 years old. My mom died unexpectedly. She lives I was the closest relative, 560 miles away. She was having health issues with her heart. She was frail. She was going through depression. She was kind of giving up on life. Along the way, she actually went on hospice twice. Her resources were meager, $60,000 in a home. That's all she had. But her goal was she wanted to live independently and alone. Our issues were limited money, hospice, healthcare providers urging that she be placed in a nursing home, and then her remoteness from the family. So kind of go back to what I told you at the very beginning. I began blindly trying to help my grandmother until I got a care coordinator involved. And by doing so, we were able to find resources in her community. We were able to bring some services into her home. We eventually moved her into assisted living after about 6 years of living in her own home. While she was at the assisted living, she was there for 4 years. She really came to like it, really came to think of it as her home. There were more than a couple of occasions when, in fact, she had a hard time getting into the assisted living because she was on hospice. But our care coordinator was able to work with the facility so that we could bring in some extra care until she got strong enough. And she did. She had lost down to 90 pounds, and once she got into the facility and started eating correctly, we cut down her medications from 14 to 4. She started gaining her weight back. She got back to her normal gregarious self, and again, lived there for 4 years. And then at the very end of life, she transferred to a nursing home where she spent 50 days, and she died at age 96. Cute saying that I like to quote from her is, "Honey, I know someday I will have to go to a nursing home. I just want to know about it." And again, it goes back to that goal of wanting to stay at home, to stay in control. So our lesson from my grandmother was, with proper guidance, you can stay at home longer, that the transitions in care can be very gradual. The support for the caregiver is critical. And let me talk about that just a little bit. Sometimes the caregiver can lose themselves. I know that I felt I was losing myself as a grandson. And when I got the care coordinator involved, I got to go back to being a grandson. And that's not unusual. And finally, we were able to help with my grandmother to stretch out her resources so that she could stay where she wanted to stay. And that was really important for her. So what do you need to do if you're facing an aging or chronic illness issue? We would like to meet with you to talk about that in a strategy session. Don't wait. The longer you wait, the greater the crisis, the less the assets, and the more limited the options. But more especially, don't give up. There are solutions, even if you're looking at needing some type of care at home or in some other setting. There are still solutions that are available to help you. I want to talk about JB for a minute, because JB was a gentleman that came to us about his parents, and both were aged and trying to live at home. And he really wanted to keep them at home. That was really a big deal for him. And we worked with him for many years. We were able to keep his mom at home for many, many years, and she actually died at home. And then his dad, after his mom died, his actually the mom was kind of the well spouse, if you will. After his mom died, his dad could not stay at home safely. So we ended up moving his dad to a nursing home, but we were there to help JB be sure that he got good care. And so eventually he died. But I thought it was interesting what he said. I felt very comfortable with everyone I worked with. Clinkscales helped us through some very hard years. JB was a caregiver child, and watching his parents age was very, very hard on him. But I think we provided a lot of relief for him during that difficult time. And I'm sorry, I've got away from the slides again. So far you've discovered there are ways to plan for possible long-term care costs, and the plan will protect your spouse, your family, and your assets. You can pay for long-term care with private resources, or if necessary, you can access government programs, but you don't have to go broke. With proper planning and care, you can delay or avoid the nursing home, allowing you to stay at home. So I hope you get this one thing. Proper planning with an expert improves the opportunity opportunity to stay at home, to be sure you protect your family, and to preserve your assets from the devastation of long-term care costs. I'm going to leave that up for a second because I want you to read it again. But we have to do planning. We have to take action. So how do I make that happen? Again, we want to talk with you to come up with some strategies, how this will work. We'll have a 60 to 90-minute meeting in person or by Zoom or by telephone with me or one of the other two attorneys. At it, we will discuss your financial and legal needs should you require outside care, or if you've developed a chronic illness or dementia. We'll review your current estate plan. We'll establish with you long-term goals. If you are dealing with a chronic illness or aging issues, we'll develop a plan to keep you safe and in the least restrictive environment. And then I'll answer any other unique situations that you are facing. And let me tell you, everybody is facing a unique situation. At the end of our time together, I'll provide to you an analysis of your current plan. You'll have better clarity of your issues and goals. There will be a blueprint on how to achieve those goals, and you'll know the exact amount of the investment to achieve the goals in your plan. What happens after the meeting? You'll decide to get started. We'll draft the plan. We'll schedule another meeting to go over the plan and make some final decisions. We'll prepare all the necessary documents to be signed by you at another meeting. Then there's some other work we need to get done with some other tools, such as titling property and so forth. And if we're dealing with a chronic illness or aging issues that require assistance, you're going to be meeting with one of our care coordinators as part of this process. So the first meeting would typically cost $450, but if we're going to give you that strategy session for free. Sounds so good to be true. I don't know where my secretary came up with this, but we have about 8 spots over the next 3 weeks. If you want to get in soon, if you want to do so and get your free strategy session, call this number. You don't need to remember it because the other option is we're actually going to send you a link by email through SurveyMonkey, or you can just call this number. Either way, you'll get to us. And then what will happen is actually we're going to visit with you about your situation and make sure it's something that we can help you with. So make the phone call so that we can find out if we can help you. And if we can't, we'll actually help you find someone who can. Here's my personal guarantee to you. After that meeting, you're going to know more than you did before today. You're going to have an analysis of what happens if you do nothing, and your time will not be wasted. So again, this is on the right-hand side of the screen. You'll see the SurveyMonkey that's going to be coming out to you. And then here's the number, 877-325-8040. Those of you who sign up for a meeting, you'll get a free book, Protect Your Family, Don't Write a Blank Check to the Nursing Home. And in addition, a rather detailed written summary of our recommendations. So remember, it's a free strategy session. We're going to analyze your current plan. We're going to give you a free written report. Free book, Protect Your Family, Don't write a blank check to the nursing home. So there's a lot of value in what in this strategy session. So I'm going to turn it over to Emily now. Emily, anything you want to add?
Yes, so it doesn't look like we have any questions in the chat box at the moment. So we'll go ahead and start kind of wrapping up here. As I mentioned before, if you have a question or would like to speak with Randy privately, please message me now in the chat box and let me know so I can put you in a private room with Randy or one of our other staff members, Tracy. So please go ahead and let us know that in the next few minutes here. Also, as Randy mentioned, be on the lookout for that follow-up email from us here at Clinkscales, which will include the link where you can sign up to receive your free strategy session. So please be sure to take advantage of that. Also, that email will include a recorded video of this presentation for you to refer back to, share with others, or whatever is easy for you to use that for. So we appreciate your attendance today and want to remind everyone of our next upcoming webinars that we have in December. We have a presentation on if the diagnosis is dementia, which is next Tuesday, December 8th, with sessions at both 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. And then we also have a presentation regarding the 8 steps you need to know for the second half of life, which is December 15th, with the same time sessions as well. So we encourage everyone to go ahead and sign up for those also, and to keep an eye on our website, elderlawkansas.com/events, to stay up with our free online events and workshops that we host. So please feel free to call or message us if you have any questions, and please be sure to fill out that survey to get that free strategy session and your book. So I haven't seen anyone go ahead and message us. So with that, I will go ahead and thank Randy for the fantastic presentation. And thank you all for joining us this afternoon. And we wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks, everyone.